Hey everybody, Jeppy here, and welcome to another operator lore video. You guys voted for today's video to cover Alibi's lore and stories, so let's get right into this. Okay, so Alibi's real name is actually Aria De Luca, and she was born on December 15th in Tripoli, Libya. Okay, so this time, do we have anybody watching the video that shares the same birthday as Alibi? There has to be someone with December 15th, right? Anyways, did you guys catch how Alibi was born in Libya, but she's an Italian operator that joins Team Rainbow? Well, that's because Alibi's family fled from Libya when she was 3 years old and immigrated to Italy. We don't know much about her family, besides the fact that Alibi's father had some serious problems with an extremely organized Italian crime syndicate that we'll talk about later in the video. Now, once Aria De Luca's family immigrated to Italy, we see that her father started up a business dealing with selling and exporting firearms. Alibi's father had wealthy and extensive contracts with the North African region of the continent to export these firearms. The business was doing well, and Alibi was introduced to firearms at an early age and quite literally was a child prodigy when it came to shooting. Okay, so I've only shot a gun a few times in my life, and I'm only 23 years old. Now here's how I know that even though Alibi is only 5'7" and only weighing in at 139 pounds, that she can totally kick my ass like no problem. Not only is she incredibly physically fit, but also extremely proficient in combat, firearm handling, and much like Cavy, she's very sneaky and excels when going undercover. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to reel it back to Alibi's childhood again. So of course by now we know that Alibi is just amazing at shooting guns, right? And hitting targets. With the family business dealing guns all the time, and her father teaching her how to shoot from an early age, she was already one of the best shots in all of Italy. Well, to be honest, she might have been, in fact, the best shot in all of Europe. We can safely make this assumption when at only 10 years old, we find out that Aria entered the European Championships organized by the European Shooting Confederation. Now, it's basically a competition on target shooting at various ranges, speeds, and type of firearms used. Do I really even need to say on how well Alibi did in this competition with the best of the best in all of Europe? I'm sure by now you can pretty much guess that she did great, right? Well, again, she was only 10 years old and freaking won the gold medal in both the 10-meter running target and the 10-meter air pistol divisions event. Just imagine being like, I don't know, 40 years old, training your whole life and losing to a little 10-year-old that is hardly even breaking a sweat. She's honestly so badass. Well, this would start her introduction into her long life of undercover police work when a recruiter for the Carabinieri saw how freaking well she did and convinced her to join the police force. Okay. So as I'm typing this script out, I'm just in awe. Something has to be messed up here because, like, Alibi is only 10 years old when she performed at this competition, and a policing recruiter convinced her to join the National Police Force of Italy at only 10 years old? At least that's what it says in her bio and everywhere else I've researched for this video. So, like, did Alibi really become a police officer at 10 years old? That just sounds like, I don't know, too unbelievable to actually be true. I mean, like, just imagine getting pulled over by a 10-year-old. Okay, so, like, really hoping that Ubisoft just picked a whole bouquet of oopsie daisies here and just forgot to say she, like, I don't know, at least turned 18 before joining the police force. Well, before I talk about Alibi growing up and becoming a police officer, I want to dive much more in depth with her family's life and basically how the Italian mob controlled her father and his business. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there in the beginning and say that I'm sure her father loved Alibi and her family very, very much, and was basically forced to support the Italian mob and the consequences of this. Okay, so we know that Alibi's father was a businessman selling firearms, right? Well, the Italian mob being, well, the Italian mob, of course, wanted a part of all of this. So based on what I've read and researched, it looks like Alibi's father made a deal with the mob to give them a certain amount of money in a allotted amount of time in exchange for quote unquote protection. Okay, so I can totally understand where her father's thought process is here. You may look at him and be like, wow, what a messed up guy, putting his family at risk with being affiliated with the mob. But let me explain real quick. Now, I couldn't find anything that confirms this, but I have a likely theory on what happened. So Alibi's father owned a firearms business, right? Well, guess what crime lords love? Well, guns. I believe that the mob came up to Alibi's father demanding a deal that he will have to pay a certain amount of money and probably even some guns to them in exchange for protection from probably other crime syndicates. But I don't think he truly wanted to be affiliated. He was most definitely forced to, because he probably assumed that if he refused the offer from them, he would have been beaten, robbed, and they maybe even would have killed him anyways. And even worse, may have even hurt his family. And we know that they have the means or the utter disregard for mercy to do this. And I'll go in more depth and explain later on this when I get into the psychological evaluation Harry completed on Alibi for joining Team Rainbow later in the video. But just for now, trust me, that Alibi's father was not a bad man and did this out of fear from hurting his family. I'm going to be going over this a little bit later. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get back to Alibi when she joined the police force. So since Alibi was just a goddess at precision shooting skills and her very formal professionalism, she climbed the ranks of the department very quickly. She even transferred and served a decent amount of her life with well, I'm not going to even try to pronounce all that, so I'm just going to say the ROS. I like that better, which is an elite division that specializes in fighting organized crime in Italy. She did very well there and started earning a name for herself and getting pretty popular. Then her career would soon advance further when she was offered to join the Gruppo Intervento Speciale, or the GIS, which is like the cream of the crop in Italy, and this same organization that Maestro came from. Now we're going to be talking about Maestro and Alibi in a little bit in the video, guys. Hang on for that. So with the GIS, Alibi performed an amazing operation with her unit in the country of Afghanistan, even though she got separated from her unit. The GIS saw how damn good Arya was and sent her undercover to dismantle organized crime. And God, was Alibi good at going undercover. Probably just as good as even Bandit, Cavy, and maybe even Maverick. She was sent to infiltrate the Vinciguerra crime family in Italy as an undercover arms dealer and spent a whopping several years with them. Now just imagine changing your identity and your personality and living that life for several years just to dismantle a crime syndicate because your job told you to. If that's not serious dedication, I don't know what is. Also, just imagine what Alibi would have been forced to do to truly blend in with the crime family. Like, I'm sure she was forced to do some awful things out of fear of being caught if she didn't comply with them. Well, after a couple of years, they truly trusted her as one of their own at this point. Okay, so something truly major Alibi was about to discover about the Vinciguerra crime family was about to happen that will honestly haunt her to this day. But in order for me to talk about it and share the details, I have to skip forward a bit in her life, then go back to this time period to really go over the details with you guys. Okay, so we all know that eventually Alibi becomes a member of Team Rainbow, right? Like, of course, we know this. We all know this, blah, blah, blah. So let me get to the part where Harry, the director of Team Rainbow, does the psychological evaluation he needs to do on every cadet when they join Team Rainbow. But this time, the evaluation doesn't seem like it was written as a conversation form with Alibi. It looks like it was written without Alibi possibly knowing what Harry wrote, and here's why I think this. So I think the psychological report is confidential because it talks about some pretty dark secrets that I'm sure Alibi doesn't think he knows about or wants anyone to know about. Harry does some detective work in order to fully understand Alibi and take a deeper look into her past, and it's pretty shocking. So Harry got into contact with the Carabinieri's chief of staff office and gained access to Alibi's psych evals while she was in the GIS earlier in her life, and what he found is crazy. So let's now go back to when Alibi was undercover so I can share with you guys all the details and give you guys the full picture. Okay, so remember how I said that the Vinciguerra crime family trusted Alibi as one of their own at this point, right? Well, they trusted her enough to bring her around their compound just outside the city of Genoa, Italy. What she found was disgusting. They showed her the dozens and dozens of human refugees being held captive there, waiting to be sold into the slave trade or the human and sex trafficking trade. Men, women, and children, freaking families being sold off. Now, this hit Alibi like a truck because literally her family was refugees, and she could have very well ended up in these same cages that these people are. It was unlike anything she has ever seen before. She had no idea it was truly this bad the number of years she was there, and she felt like she needed to act now in order to save their lives. Now, what Harry found in the psych reports that it looks like Alibi may have leaked out this information to the news and the press about what's truly going on with this crime family. Very soon after the story was published and put in the news, the GIS heard about this. They didn't know Alibi was the one who leaked this information though, but they panicked as they didn't want the crime family to find out about this news and quickly cover their tracks with either selling them off really quickly or transporting them all before the authorities arrived to gather proof. So the GIS had to quickly raid the compound before they were truly ready to do so. Everything worked out in the end though, and the crime family was all arrested. But it was close. They barely got there in time to get the proof of the human trafficking. Something interesting though is that Maestro was the leader of this unit that raided the compound. It looks like Alibi and Maestro worked very close together in this mission. Harry even notes this in the psychological interview as he talks about Maestro's recruitment into Rainbow was heavily influenced by Alibi's recruitment. Harry thinks that something is up between Maestro and Alibi though, and he can't quite put his finger on it. He's quoted saying in his evaluation that their relationship is volatile, which means unpredictable. Are they close friends? Are they familiar? Or are they something else? He just doesn't know. Harry then goes on to say that Alibi fits in very well with Team Rainbow, but except for the hazing happening from the SAS and the Navy SEALs on Alibi. Now, I'm unsure on why the SAS and the SEALs are basically bullying Alibi, even though they're on the same team, Team Rainbow. Does anyone have any theories on this, why the SAS or SEALs may be doing this to Alibi? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, so real quick, something else Harry found while going through Alibi's personal file is some pretty crazy information about her father. And this information really doubles down on the theory that her father was forced to become a member of the Italian mob and didn't choose to. So Harry finds multiple hospital visit and bill records of her father. Pretty much all of them have to do with some type of trauma inflicted onto the body, whether it was broken fingers or an arm that was broken twice for reportedly falling down the stairs. The injuries match up to what the mob would typically do to someone as punishment if they didn't pay up in time for their protection. So I feel like her father took the beatings and the torture so that his family didn't have to. Every broken finger, beating, or broken arm was to make sure that he got it instead of his family. And it says in her reports that Alibi knew about it. That's probably why she had such a deep hatred for organized crime syndicates and would dedicate years of her life to go undercover to stop them. It's such a heartbreaking story. One thing I do want to say is I think if Alibi found out that Harry knew all this information about her, it would not end well. I think Alibi would get so pissed off and feel so betrayed that Harry did this and went behind her back to get this information. I think she would leave if she knew that Harry knew all of this. Real quick, guys, before we wrap up today's video, I want to talk about the device evaluation that's on Alibi's Prismas that was actually completed by Twitch and Echo along with some of Alibi's inputs. So Twitch and Echo designed and built her holograms. Well, according to Echo, they're not actually holograms, but actually more like volumetric displays, which basically uses laser light to suspend dust particles in the air and colorizes them with the light. So basically it's turning the dust in the air to make a lifelike model that looks like Alibi. So they're not actually holograms. Echo is amazed at how they created a 2D model in a 3D frame and making it look so realistic at multiple angles. He says how they made an image that's over 1,600 dpi. He goes on to say that if you know anything about photography, that you'd be awestruck at the 1,600 dpi and what they made. Well, guys, what do you think about Alibi's lore? I thought it was cool, but kind of sad, especially with the human trafficking and the fact that her dad sacrificed so much to protect her and her family. Now, who should I do in the next Operated Lore video? Leave your suggestions below. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications if you're new. Now, with all that being said, Jeppy out!